Welcome to my Week 15 NFL picks and predictions. I will be picking these games both against the spread and who I think will win outright, but I do track my record against the spread. Last week was the worst week I've had in a while. I went 8-7 against the spread, and that leaves me at 125-93 overall this season. 8-7 isn't great, but it is above 500, so I'm gonna take it. That's still considered beating Vegas. Let's see if we can do better this week. Let's start with Thursday Night Football, and these primetime games, specifically Thursday night, have been pretty bad all season. You kind of got a feel for Amazon, who paid billions of dollars for the rights to Thursday night games, and they just have not been good. And this week is one of the worst ones. We have the Chargers and Raiders playing, both of them on their backup quarterbacks, and I just can't imagine who is tuning in to watch Easton Stick and Aiden O'Connell battle it out on Thursday night. You'd have to be like a diehard fan of one of the teams or a gambling addict if you're sitting down start to finish for this one. I just don't think there's going to be a lot of casual fans watching this, and maybe I'm wrong, but you gotta wonder if they're getting a return on their investment with games this bad. But let's get into the game. The Raiders are hosting the Chargers, and the Raiders are 3.5 point favorites at home. Vegas is coming off one of the worst games in the history of the league. They lost 3-0 to Minnesota, and that game was scoreless until less than 2 minutes to go in the entire game. Like I said, it ended 3-0, and that's the lowest scoring game in 16 years in the NFL. I was pretty surprised by it. I mean, Minnesota's playing so bad, they just flat out benched Joshua Dobbs, and I thought that Vegas had shown a little bit of something in that Kansas City game, and Aiden O'Connell hasn't been bad. I thought they were going to be fine in that game. Luckily, they did cover. They were dogs by 3.5, so we got that, but I really thought they would do something, and they quite literally did nothing. They scored 0 points. But then we look at the other side, and Justin Herbert is out for the year with a broken finger. Their season was already in the dumps. Brandon Staley, for who knows what reason, is still their head coach. Easton Stick is now their quarterback. They're coming off an ass whooping they took to Denver, a game in which they went 0 for 12 on third downs, 0% conversion rate on third down. And of course, it's Brandon Staley, so when they didn't convert those third downs, he thought it was in the best interest of the team to then keep the offense out there and go for it 6 more times, all of which they failed except for 1. So they went over 12 on third down, 1 for 6 on fourth down. And I mean, not good. I just don't trust this Chargers team at all, especially without Herbert. And I mean, it appears that Brandon Staley has probably lost his job. I don't know why he wasn't let go in the middle of the season. You never root for a guy to be fired. It's just, you wonder what that plan is. It's pretty obvious they're going to part ways at the end of the year. And so that makes me even more nervous. He's already a questionable decision maker, and now he's out there with really nothing to lose and a backup quarterback. I just can't imagine the stuff he's going to throw at this game. I just think it's a recipe for disaster, and I think Vegas is going to bounce back. I think they're going to win this game. I think they're going to cover. I don't know what happened in Minnesota, and I don't know why I still have faith in them, but I think that they're going to take care of business on Thursday. I'm going to take Vegas to win. I'm going to take them to cover -3.5, and hopefully they give us a somewhat entertaining primetime Thursday night game. Then we have 3 Saturday games this week, which is a potential problem for those of us that have significant others and are already on thin ice with the amount of football we've been watching during the holidays. This might be good preparation to start, getting your pitches ready for Christmas Eve, because Christmas Eve falls on a Sunday this year. So that's going to be a tough sell. And I wish all of you the best of luck in your attempt to justify your desire to sit down and watch football games during the holidays this season. Our first Saturday game is Cincinnati hosting Minnesota, and the Bengals are 3.5 point favorites at home. And these are two teams that are both 7-6, but appear to be going in completely different directions right now. Minnesota just benched Josh Dobbs after really a weird downfall, like a couple really good games where everyone was really excited about him, and then 2 horrible games in a row, and now he's out. Nick Mullins is in, and there's just really not a lot of hope for that team the rest of the year. And Cincinnati, where Joe Burrow was out, they kind of thought their season was over, and now it's on the uprise because Jake Browning's been playing out of his mind, and they have a legit chance to make the playoffs. Now, Minnesota just played in that game that we talked about against the Raiders, that bad game, 3-0 game. And I don't know if this makes it better or worse, but I might be wrong in my justification. But to me, they played in that game. They had 9 punts, and they allowed, I think, 4 or 5 sacks, and they had 0 turnovers. Now, normally that's a good thing. You don't want to turn the ball over. But to me, when you look at it, and you look at a team that scored 0 points until the final 2 minutes of a game, and then kicked a field goal to win it, you would think or almost hope that there was something to look at, hey, we turned the ball over too many times. We had a couple picks, maybe a fumble or vice versa. Like all we got to do is clean that up, tighten that, and then we'll be okay for next game. But you look at this tape and it's like they didn't turn the ball over once. They just couldn't do a single thing on offense. Like their scheme was just wrong. They didn't have any plays that got them any yards, or any points. Like that sounds backwards. Like you don't want turnovers, but I just think when you play a game that bad, it would be nice to look at the stats and see something that you could obviously change. Like, hey, make better decisions, don't lose the ball. And there isn't any of that. They just punted a lot, got very few first downs, and couldn't score any points. And that seems like a hopeless position to be in. I mean, they had 99 total passing yards between Dobbs and Mullins in that game. At least Vegas can like point to the 3 turnovers, 2 of them being fumbles, and be like, hey, clean that up a bit. We probably win that game. Like at least there's something obvious to point at. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that's a dumb take. I have no idea. But this is another game that's a battle of the backups, just like Thursday Night Football. We've got Vikings now on their 3rd string with Nick Mullins, and then the Bengals, like I mentioned, with Jake Browning. And I mean, Browning has just been playing really solid, which has been surprising. They've put up 34 points in both games that he started, and they look good. Their team is good. I think that they're definitely the better team. And as long as Browning doesn't have like a massive decline, I think they should put these guys away relatively easy, especially with the playoffs on the line. I'm going to take Cincy to win the game, and I'm going to take the -3.5 at home. Our next Saturday game is Indianapolis at home hosting Pittsburgh, and Indianapolis is favored by 2.5. And this is our 3rd straight game where the backup quarterbacks are starting. We have Mitch Trubisky for the Steelers and Gardner Minshew for the Colts. It really is crazy how many starting quarterbacks this year were either injured or benched for performance. It honestly makes picking the spreads a little bit harder because you don't have a big sample size of how they play. And you look at a guy like Dobbs that we just talked about, where he's been hyped up for the first 2 weeks he gets to Minnesota, and you really think there might be building something. You think they might push for the playoffs. And then here we are 2 weeks later, dude's benched. He's just done. And so, I mean, these 2 quarterbacks that are playing, Trubisky and Minshew, they are more seasoned backups. They have played more. Minshew's played for the Colts specifically almost all season, and Trubisky's been in the league for a while. He's been a starting quarterback before. So this one's a little bit, I think, easier, but across the league, it's just difficult when you don't know what you're going to get at quarterback. The backups just tend to be more inconsistent. So based on what we have seen from those 2 quarterbacks, I just trust Minshew much, much more. I like the Colts team better. I like that they're playing at home. And this is really a huge game for the playoffs right now. Both teams are 7-6. Both teams are fighting for a spot in the playoffs. I just think the Colts seem like more of a playoff team. I don't think Pittsburgh is going to end up getting in. I mean, they've lost back-to-back games to 2 bottom teams in the league. They lost to Arizona and they lost to New England. And both of those games were at home. And Indy has been solid this year. They're coming off a beatdown they took from Cincy, but they'd won 4 games in a row prior to that. Gardner has played well. Their team all around has been solid. They're what you expect for a team fighting on the fringe playoff spot. I think Pittsburgh's trending downwards. I think Indy is still in the fight, and I think I'm going to take Indy -2.5 and obviously to win the game. Okay, then for the Saturday night game, we finally have some starting quarterbacks. Okay, we got Denver playing at Detroit, and Detroit is 4.5 point favorites at home. Denver has won 6 out of their last 7 games, and they're in the hunt for the playoffs, which I just don't think anyone, especially myself, thought was remotely possible after the first 4 or 5 games in the beginning of the year. I mean, they lost 70-20. It looked like they were done. And Russ after the game was like, oh, I still believe. It's like, no, you don't. No, we don't. You're done. Here we are. I mean, they're cruising, and I don't know if they might make the playoffs. Like, this is crazy. This is crazy. They're coming off a convincing win over the Chargers, and then this is really their last test for the rest of the year. Then they play New England, the Chargers again, and then Vegas. They have a real shot at winning out the rest of the year, and I think that would for sure put them in the playoffs. And then Detroit, I think, is in a little bit of a slump. They haven't been losing a ton of games, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're playing at a level you would want or expect them to heading into the playoffs. They had to score like 100 points to barely slip past the Chargers a few weeks ago. They had to come back from a double-digit deficit to the Bears in the final couple minutes to win that game. They lost to Green Bay, and then they lost outright to the Bears by 2 scores. Oh, and they played New Orleans, and they were up 21-0 like 4 minutes into the game and still almost lost that one. So they've won some and they've lost some others, but I don't feel great about their wins, and I feel bad about their losses. Like, it just doesn't seem like they're playing at at the high level they need to be playing at, especially if they want to compete at all for the top seed, which might be out of question now. I just feel like this game is going to be a statement game for them one way or the other. I think they're either going to come out and dominate Denver and show that they are a legitimate contender, or I think they're going to come out flat and I think they're going to lose. I think Denver's going to win. I don't know. I just don't know. I think that Detroit's defense has been really bad, and that's going to allow Denver to get some rhythm on offense, and Denver's defense has been really good. So if Denver's defense can slow down, Jared Goff and the offense even a little bit, I think they can score enough points to win, and especially enough points to cover 4.5. So I'm going to take Denver to win and obviously cover the 4.5. Then we have Carolina hosting Atlanta, and Atlanta is coming in as 3.5 point favorites on the road. Now I feel like I've been softly going to bat for the Panthers. I just feel like I've been holding out, thinking that maybe they start to show some life. Maybe Bryce Young starts to show some improvement. They have no reason to lose. They don't have their pick. Eventually, they've got to show some sign of life. And I continue to just be wrong about that. They're not good. I mean, last week, Bryce Young was 13 for 36 against New Orleans. And I like them. I want them to be good. I would never root for a team to be bad. The problem is Atlanta also feels like they're always in a 2-point game, winning or losing. And so I don't feel a lot of confidence picking them to cover 3.5. But last time they played Carolina, they beat them down, and they're still fighting for their chances at the playoffs, which is crazy. Their division is that bad. But I mean, Desmond Ridder played well last week. They at least showed they could move the ball and they could score some points. And I just don't think the Panthers have proven that yet. And hopefully they can get something going eventually. I just don't know if it's going to be this week. So I'm going to take Atlanta to win, and I'm going to take them to cover 3.5. Then we have Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns hosting the Chicago Bears as 3.5 point favorites at home. Listen, the Bears looked good last week, and Fields has been playing well ever since he came back. They almost beat the Lions twice. They did beat them once. They should have won the other game as well. But they've also had some bad games. That Minnesota game was really, really bad. That 12-10 game that they lost, that no one could do anything. I think they've definitely shown some positives, and I think Fields is proving that he could be their guy if they want to use their picks on something else. But I think that Cleveland's defense is still, like I've said a million times, absolutely elite at the top of the league. And Joe Flacco is back there just slinging it. He's throwing 40 times a game. He's throwing downfield. They're scoring points. He's just slinging the rock, and he looks like a legit starting quarterback. And I think that that's exactly what they needed, because the rest of their roster is really good. That defense is really good. Njoku's really good. Amari Cooper, Jerome Ford is playing well. They have a team, and they have a good record still. They're probably going to make the playoffs. And if they do, I mean, 38-year-old Joe Flacco, I don't know. I think they're a legitimately good team. And as long as he doesn't have a steep decline, like I've been saying about, the other backup quarterbacks, I like that team. And I think that their defense is going to put too much pressure on Justin Fields and that offense. I think the Browns can score enough points. I think they're going to win this game handily. I think they'll be just fine. So I'm going to take them to win, and I'm going to take them to cover -3.5. Then we have Tennessee hosting Houston as 2.5 point favorites at home. And Tennessee is coming off that massive win against the Dolphins. They escaped with a 1-point victory. And I know everyone's talking about how they came back in the final couple minutes. They were down and they pulled it off. But if you watch the game or even just watch the highlights, I really felt like they were in control most of that game. Miami, they only scored 3 touchdowns that game. Not only, that's a lot, but they scored 3 touchdowns. The first touchdown was a 4-yard or 5-yard pick six. So a defensive touchdown. That's the only touchdown they scored in the first half. Then in the second half, Tennessee had a muffed punt on the 6-yard line. Miami would then immediately score following that muffed punt. Their third touchdown was a Will Levis pitch to Derrick Henry that was fumbled on the 11-yard line. Miami would immediately score following that. So the only time they actually scored touchdowns, I mean, the ball was practically given to them. The pick six was a D lineman. Will Levis threw it right to his chest. The muffed punt has nothing to do with Miami. That's all on Tennessee. And the fumbled pitch, again, that had nothing to do with Miami. It's completely on Tennessee. And they were given incredible field position or a touchdown on all 3 of those times. So it's kind of like what I was talking about with Minnesota, where they didn't have much to clean up. Tennessee won this game, and they have a lot to clean up. They had 3 terrible mistakes that all immediately turned into touchdowns. That's 21 straight points they practically handed the Dolphins. So to me, that's a great sign for them. They played well, they won the game, they came back at the end, and there's things that they can control and they can can fix for going into next week. I feel like that's a great sign for them. And I'm very surprised how good they look. And then Houston, on the other hand, it's just such an unfortunate situation for them because they have been so fun to watch this year. And CJ Stroud has been one of my favorite players all season to watch, but their injuries are eating them up. They have Tank Dell, who we know is out for the year. Nico Collins is now questionable. Dalton Schultz hasn't been playing. Noah Brown is questionable. So that's literally 4 receivers, if you're including Schultz, who's a tight end, that are questionable or out right now. And CJ Stroud didn't even practice on Wednesday because he has a concussion. So we don't even know if he's going to play. So they either have CJ Stroud and no one to throw the ball to, or no one to throw the ball to and a backup quarterback. It's just not a good spot for them to be in. It's really a bummer because it's been so fun to watch them kind of come up on the rise this year. But I just think with all of that playing into it and how well Tennessee played, and hopefully they can build off of that, I'm going to take Tennessee to win. I'm going to take them to cover -2.5. Next, we have New England hosting Kansas City. And man, remember when this was like the game, an exciting game to watch? New England and Kansas City, like this was a battle once upon a time. But right now, Kansas City has lost 3 out of their last 4 games, and they're really struggling to gather momentum heading into the playoffs. And they've kind of taken themselves out of the running for the 1 seed in the AFC. And we all saw what happened in the Bills game. Like that was, Travis Kelce had one of the coolest plays I've ever seen in sports, period. With that backwards pass to Tony, it was a perfect spiral. He was completely covered, absolute dime. And come to find out, Kadarius Toney lined up offsides. So far offsides, he could have been playing defense. And I'm not going to get into that debate, whether or not you think that should have been called or shouldn't have been called. I think we can all agree we wish that play is something that counted because that was so cool to witness. And it's a bummer that's it pretty much just doesn't exist now. But they've really got to start putting some wins together now. And I know this sounds impossible, but Denver's only 1 game behind them now in the division. And that is something that they cannot afford to have happen. Like they cannot let them catch them. They just can't. They need to start putting together wins, gathering themselves. If their receivers could just catch passes when they're wide open and not line up off sides, I think it'd look a little bit different this year. And so hopefully they can clean that up heading into the next few games and really be ready for the playoffs, because right now they just do not look like a team that is going to compete at a Super Bowl level. Having said all that, they are going on the road in New England and they're favored by 9.5 on the road. And although that seems a little bit high, I really think they're going to do it. I think that they need the win. I think they're a much better team than New England. I think they are going to want, obviously, to have a bounce back game after the last few weeks. And I think they're going to go in there and take care of business. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to cover the 9.5. I know New England's coming off that win against the Steelers, but the Steelers don't appear to be that good at football. And just the week before that, the Patriots scored literally 0 points against the Chargers. And we know the Chargers aren't good at football. So they don't have the best resume right now. I don't think they're going to be able to compete with a legit team like Kansas City. And I don't think we really have anything to worry about. I feel pretty confident about this one, which probably means I'm wrong because that's always how it goes. But I'm going to take Kansas City to cover and win. Then we have New Orleans hosting the Giants, and the Saints are favored by 4.5 at home. This line seems a little bit high to me. DeVito's coming off a great game on Monday Night Football. They just beat the Packers and they've won 3 games in a row. Now those 3 games haven't been against great opponents, but I would consider the Packers good, and I would consider the Packers equal or even a little bit better than New Orleans. I just can't pinpoint the Saints. Like they can come out and score 35 points or they could end the game 10-7. I just don't know what version of them we're going to get. And I mean, the same can be said for the Giants. Like they've just not been great all year, but they have some momentum, and the DeVito thing is really becoming a thing. And I know this is getting boring because I'm picking every team I'm picking to cover. I'm also saying they're going to win. And I know that's probably not going to happen, but I'm going to take New York in this game. I don't know why. I just don't love either team. I think 4.5 is a lot. I'm going to take New York to cover, and I'm going to take them to win the game and keep this DeVito train rolling. Then we have Miami hosting Zach Wilson and the New York Jets. Zach Wilson, man, he's back. Here we are. This is like the Jets' like 4th quarterback change this year. So good for them. It's the true sign of a dysfunctional organization. The Jets team has been a mess all season. They have no idea what they want to do. Their defense is really, really good. Their offense can't do anything. And yet I have a weird feeling about this game, and I don't know why. I think it's going to be close. I think Miami's going to win, but I do think the Jets keep this one close. So this will be my first switch up. I'm going to take the Jets to cover plus 9.5, even though I'm going to take Miami to win the game. However, if Tyreek doesn't play, because right now he is listed as questionable, if he does not play, I actually think New York's going to win this game. I'm feeling the Jets. It's just all vibes right here. I'm gonna pick the Jets plus 9.5, and I'll pick the Dolphins to win if Tyreek plays. If he doesn't play, I'm gonna take the Jets to win. So that's kind of a caveat there. Then we have Green Bay hosting Tampa Bay, and the Packers are 3.5-point favorites at home. And they're obviously just coming off that disappointing loss to the Giants after they had some sort of momentum. Jordan Love has been looking really good, and obviously a big letdown game for them on primetime. But even with that game, I just don't think I'm going to let it change my mind on them yet. I still think they're good. I still think they have a chance to make the playoffs. I still like what I've seen from Jordan Love. I think they made some mistakes and missed some opportunities in that Giants game, but before that, I mean, they beat KC and they beat Detroit, and this was a close one. Like they could have won this one. And if a couple things changed, I don't know. I just didn't feel like hopeless about them when the game was over. And I just think they're a flat out better team than Tampa Bay is right now. I just think if the Packers are going to be a playoff team and they want to keep some momentum going or get that momentum back, I think they can just flat out win this game by 4 or more. So I don't know. This one's a tough one, but I'm going to take the Packers minus 3.5 and obviously to win. Then we have the Cardinals as 13.5-point dogs at home against the Niners. I know that's a big line, especially for a home team, but I just don't see any scenario I can feel comfortable picking against the Niners right now. I don't even know what the spread would have to be to make me pick the Cardinals. 9 out of the Niners' 10 wins this season have been by double digits, and 2 of those blowouts were against Philly and Dallas, their biggest competition probably in the NFL right now. They're just moving at a different level. They're in another tier than any other team in the league right now. They've been too dominant to pick against, and even though Arizona has been playing better since Kyler Murray came back, and maybe this is the game where they surprise us, I'm just not going to bet on that. I can't bet against the Niners, and that's kind of a boring pick, but I'm taking the Niners to win and to cover just based on everything else they've shown us this season, except for that 3-game skid where Purdy got concussed and they lost a couple in a row. The rest of the games they've just dominated. Okay, then we have the Commanders traveling into LA to play the Rams, and the Rams are favored by 6.5 at home. 6.5 is a pretty big line for a team that is 6-7 to be expected to cover, but the Commanders have been on a bad streak. They've allowed 45 points in back-to-back games against the Dolphins and Cowboys and got beat by 2 scores to the Giants in the game before that. And the Rams offense has been legitimately good. They've been putting up a lot of yards and a lot of points, and if they could just put together a couple good complete games as an offense and defense together, I think they'd be a solid 7 seed. They almost beat the Ravens. They've played good games this year, and like I said, their offense has been legitimately competent. I don't like that big number again as a team that right now has a losing record, but I just think the offense is good enough to score enough points, and I don't think Washington is really good at all right now. They've just been really struggling. So I'm going to take the Rams to cover minus 6.5 and obviously to win. Then we have Dallas traveling to Buffalo, and Dallas is obviously coming off that massive win on Sunday Night Football against Philadelphia, a game in which they very much needed. They proved they belong, and the Bills are coming off that wild game in Kansas City, and you can decide yourself whether they deserve that win or not. I'm not going to comment on that, okay? He was offsides. If you think he should have called it or not, I don't know. But Buffalo kept their playoff hopes alive with that win. Now they are legitimately in the race. They have a legitimate chance. This is a big game for them at home against a very good Dallas team. And on Dallas's side, like, they've been absolutely dominant at home this year, and now they've won a couple games against teams with winning records. So I think they've pushed that a little bit aside, but it would be really great for them to beat another good team, especially on the road in a tough place to play like Buffalo. So I think both teams have a lot to take away from this. I think they both want it really, really bad. And I think this is going to be a back and forth game. I really think this is going to be a really, really fun game to watch. Probably not for me because I'll be stressed the entire time, but for the rest of the NFL world, I think it's going to be fun. And I wish it were a night game again, but it probably wouldn't be fair to give the Cowboys back-to-back primetime games. Buffalo's favored by 2.5 at home, and I'm going to take Dallas. I think Dallas is the better team, and I think that they're going to prove they can win on the road, but just keep in mind that is a pick blinded by bias, so take it with a grain of salt. I think Dak is going to continue his MVP campaign. I think they're going to continue to put up 30 plus points, and I think their defense can force Josh Allen to commit one of those turnovers he's been so keen to this season. So I'll take Dallas to win and cover plus 2.5. Our Sunday night game is Jacksonville hosting Baltimore, and Baltimore is coming in as 3.5 point road favorites. The Ravens are coming off a really close game against the Rams, a game in which they won on a punt return for a touchdown in overtime. And I really thought that was going to be the game that the Ravens like put the team away and made a big statement that they are like a legit Super Bowl contender. And they didn't necessarily do that, but if they win out the rest of their games, they'll be the 1 seed. Having said that, I think Jacksonville is going to pull off an upset. Their lead at the top of the AFC South is now threatened by Indianapolis after dropping a couple games. If they lose this one, they're going to be 8-6, and I think there's going to be some real questions about where they are as a playoff team. I think they're going to come in at home. I think they're going to take care of business. They're going to prove they still belong. They're going to get a better grasp on that AFC South division lead. I think they need it. I think they want it. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to play better. I'm going to take Jacksonville plus 3.5 at home against Baltimore. Then luckily we only have one Monday Night Football game this week instead of two at the same time, which was a very weird move by ESPN. But we have Philly traveling to Seattle, and Philly is coming in as 3.5-point road favorites. Now, Philly is coming out that game we just talked about against Dallas. They've now lost 2 games in a row, both pretty badly to San Francisco and Dallas, which has got to be a little bit of a blow to their confidence. And I think they need to get that back. They need to get back in the groove. They still control their destiny in the NFC East. If they win the rest of their games, they will be the 3 seed or the 2 seed or the 1 seed. They're still in a good spot even after those couple tough losses. Seattle has been up and down this year, and they're not a bad team. I don't think they're a great team. I don't think they're going to be able to keep up with Philly though. I think Philly wants the game. I think they need a bounce back, and I think they're going to roll against Seattle. They haven't had a lot of big wins this year. A lot of their games have been close, and I think they need to change that. I think they need to win some games big heading into the end of the season. Now, Seattle, on the other hand, they're one of like 40 teams that are 6-7 or 7-6 in the NFL right now, and they're still in the hunt for a playoff. So they desperately need it as well. But for some reason, I just have a feeling Philly is going to go in there and they're going to handle them. So I'm going to take Philly to win and to cover -3.5. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. It means so much to me. If you enjoyed the videos, please like and subscribe for more videos like this. And again, thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next one.